Say yes every day to the world and to your heart. Open up your eyes and let your spirit start. Say yes to the dreams you hold inside. Let your soul be your guide.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Wednesday Wisdom. Today, we are joined by the amazing Phil Ganz. He is the founder of Next Wave Mortgage. Phil, thank you so much for joining us today. It is truly a pleasure, and I'm so excited because we don't know each other at all. We are literally kicking this off cold of a brand new relationship, and that just makes me happy because I get to learn and meet someone brandy new. So, Phil, we kick off, okay, Wednesday Wisdom with the same question, because I believe that all of us, our lives are kind of made up of little lessons that we get from doing things and from learning from others. So our first question for you is, share a piece of advice, something that you learned, something that someone told you, some philosophy you live by that you kind of follow as you're advancing in your life.
Yeah, I'll give you a piece of advice from Walt Disney. Trust compounds slower than revenue, but it goes away faster. And that is the reason, till 2009, Disney World or lands did not have any alcohol, even though Walt Disney drank, because he wanted to create the gold standard for kids. In fact, they were originally, Disney World was going to be in St. Louis, Walt Disney's home, but Anheuser-Busch made fun of him to saying, you won't be successful if you don't allow alcohol in this park. He's like, you know what? We're going to go to Orlando. And that's why you have Disney World in Orlando, and you don't have it in St. Louis.
Wow. So I got to tell you, first off, I did not know that story, and I am a big, big Disney fan. So thank you for sharing that, because I just learned something. So thank you for sharing that. And let's go back to what you said. Say that one more time about trust versus revenue. So just say that slow. I want to dig into that.
Trust compounds slower than revenue, but it goes away faster.
Okay, so it compounds, but it goes away faster, because the minute that you don't have that integrity, the minute you go against the word of something that you were supposed to do as part of that relationship, it's very easy and quick to lose that. So, okay, now let's dive into your business. That was very important to you, and thank you for sharing that. And that seems to me that you use that philosophy in this successful business that you have built. So how do you apply that trust, and how do you apply that education and everything that you're doing and have done to build a successful business? How do those two things come together?
Well, you always have to do the right thing. And people want to know there's a gray area. There isn't, right? There's so many scenarios in our business that, every day is a new option of, to be honest, to be forthright, to do the right thing fast, right? And people know what's right or wrong. So you always got to do the right thing. And that's what I would tell someone, don't delay, get right to it. Integrity really matters, even though it's counterintuitive sometimes for some people. Like alcohol, like what would Walt Disney do, right? He did drink, but not in his park. You want to be the gold standard, right? You want to be the gold standard of integrity. That does matter, because, that will follow you around, right? Who you are and your integrity, that is something that will long live past your mortgage career.
I'm thinking as you're speaking, it's running through my brain about the expression, your reputation precedes you. Like when you speak about that integrity, you speak about that trust and doing the right thing. I mean, we all know that our reputations show up long before maybe a conversation or long before we start a relationship, right? Because when you do the right thing or you have that level of service and integrity, other people share that. Like that kind of precedes or the other direction, right? If you're not doing the right thing and if you don't choose the right option, that also precedes you to where people that spreads very, very quickly. Wow, so much to think about. This is why I love doing this because I hear from special people like you this brilliant advice that makes you stop and think because you're right. Every day we're making these decisions in our business lives, in our personal lives, and it sets the stage of our entire future, of what that future looks like. Now, I want to dive into the kind of business that you do, right? Now, you are very, very successful on the DSCR side of things, the investor side of things. Take us back. I want to understand, where did that start, right? Like, when did you get into that? When did you decide you were going to kind of really focus on that and become a leader in that? Take us back to that.
Yeah, I can tell you when I started doing wholesale and I realized how much better interest rates I had and more products for that, right? That's a big difference, right? DSCR is more of a broker product because it's price sensitive, right?
Yeah.
Price affects your ratios. It really does.
Of course.
Especially on the investment, you got many more options, right? And I've worked retail many years of my career. You know, I've been a broker for 3 years, a broker owner.
Okay.
And I actually was a broker for a short period when I had started the mortgage industry. But, you know, the world has changed. And being in the broker world gives you a big leg up on the price for DSCR. So once I realized I could easily win deals, it was a no-brainer because price matters. It was the easiest way for me to win.
Wow, I love that. And I love the fact that, listen, like we're gonna say that right out there that we are not one versus another. It is the best option for your business, right? Everybody make their own decisions as to what's the best thing for you. But I love the fact that you're saying, listen, I see this niche. I see that I can become the expert. I know that you do a lot of marketing and you do a lot of SEO and you've built an entire business out of how to perfect this, right? So can you share some of those things, some of the lessons that you've learned of how do I market this properly? How do I educate? How do I bring people the awareness of the opportunities of being an investor, right? Of being able to utilize these great programs that are available to them, and you being that guide and you being that professional mortgage advisor for that.
If you're a loan officer who wants more speed, more support, and a lender that actually invests in you, well, this is Laura Brandao, president at MLB Wholesale. And we're not just closing loans. We're making lives better through real education, powerful programs, and a remarkable team that is there to help you win every single day. At MLB Wholesale, your growth is our mission. Your success is the standard. And when you partner with us, you're never doing it alone. Ready to level up your business? Let's build something remarkable together.
Yeah, I mean, you know, every property is different, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I sit down with them. You know, like on Zoom, I try to get personal with people when I can to take the time to really, you know, explain, you know, their different, like, options, right? Like, you know, I gotta be honest, I didn't really fully understand, you know, the broker world, right, is way more nuanced and you have way more options, right? Like,
Yep.
it can be kind of like a little bit
Overwhelming.
And, like in the beginning, I was like, I didn't know what else to like do it, right? Like, because there's so much, it's like, I think anytime, even if you go from being super successful at retail and you make that transition, there's just so much nuance in these different products and opportunities. It did take me a little bit to like, you know, catch my breath and realize, look, you know, if you're at a 65%, we may not verify. If you want to go to 85, we can help. all these different DSCRs. I didn't even know how to calculate DSCR the way I can completely do it now. And once I became the master of the nuances, it was really easy for me to help people out that previously may have struggled. A lot of these customers, they did struggle maybe at other places, right? So it means a lot to me to be able to help out these customers. And I do a lot of DSCR, and to help out these investors is really, it's been a blessing for the wholesale market,
I agree. So now I do have to ask you, you said that you became a broker owner 3 years ago. Obviously, we know 3 years ago, market wasn't the best. Wasn't like the most glorious time in the mortgage industry in terms of cycles, right? We all know that. So what made you take that leap? Because it's a big deal, going on your own and taking on that responsibility and everything. What was that final decision of, okay, I'm doing this, like I'm making the jump?
It's funny. I was in Boston, Massachusetts. I'll tell you in a moment when it's really for me, it was, I was in Boston and I wanted to move to Florida. I had gone to the Super Bowl Patriots that beat the Seahawks, right? And at that moment, I said, you know what? Life is too short to have these regrets of what could have been.
Wow,
right?
that's
This is
interesting.
what it was about. I was in Boston. You can look at the numbers, very big numbers, over $100 million, right? And I said, you know what? Life is just too short, right? And I made the commitment to move to Massachusetts. The reality is, I didn't have all the details planned, and a lot of things planned that I didn't. I ultimately, my wife didn't come with me. I ended up getting divorced.
Oh, wow!
Right? Talk about starting over. So you really start over, and I eventually meet my new wife, and who was actually the realtor in the house I bought. Right?
Get out!
And today we got baby Madison that's 12 weeks old. So. Look, I took a big risk, right? For me, it was about the area. Then I said, you know what? I was at a different company, and I said, because I'd gone from fairway to movement. I said, you know what? Look, I want to be the one that calls the shots, right?
Okay.
It was a no-brainer,
Yep.
right? You got to take the opportunity in life. Right. A lot of people, they don't want to take the risk, or they feel very comfortable. And I get that, right? I totally get why people don't want to take the risk. And for some people, I advise you not to take the risk.
That is very true. Not everybody should.
I'm not
You're
saying
right.
like if I had to go back and it worked out, but I say, hey, Phil, you're closing over $100 million with no stress. All purchased my last year. By the way,
wow.
That was 143 million. 143 million in 21. It was like 95% purchase. I didn't even want to do refis. Why do you want to do refis when everyone's doing refis? Because I was doing 140 million in purchase.
Wow.
And that could pay my bills. It's kind of funny. I know it's a disservice, but I gave some loans to my other teammates. I was fine. I'm fine. Right. But I wanted to do other things in my life. I wanted to see if I could do it, if I could start, a company and build it up and see where that would go. Right. That's what it was about. Right.
I love that because 100%, number one, I like people to realize whenever you're listening to this right now, that's the youngest you'll ever be, because 1 second later you're older. We're already older than we started this conversation, right? There is no stopping us to think there's going to be a better time. There's always going to be a reason for us to say now is not the right time. It's never the perfect time. It doesn't matter what you're doing. But to your point, you kind of said, hey, I'm gonna take a full leap here. Right? I've got a lot of change going on. Let's go with all the change all at once, right? Let's make it one swoop.
It all happens, people, they want guarantees and perfection, and I'll tell you, a story. I told my dad, I'm like, yeah, I was taking like a big risk, all these things. He's like, look, he's like, I came from the Czech Republic, by the Czechoslovakian.
Okay.
Czechoslovakia doesn't exist, but it's now where
Right.
he was born. Communist country.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is big risk. You can die leaving, right? Because
Right.
you escape to the woods and people are trying to kill you. This is big risk. He's like, what you do, this is not big risk. It's like you're fine, right? So we always think we're taking a big risk, but people before us took much bigger risk, right? So,
It's funny you say that, right? Because most of us, for anybody listening to this, I mean, I love that story and what wise words from your father. He's right. That was a life and death situation, right? That he described. But think about it, most of us here in America, we didn't start in America. Some relative got on a boat or something or figured out some way to leave whatever country they came from to come to America. That is the reason why we're here, right? So they took a risk, right? I mean, they took the risk. They didn't speak English. They didn't have anywhere to live. They probably didn't have any money in their pocket, and they took a risk. Us deciding to become a broker and open up your broker shop, considering you had a phenomenal couple of years before that, right? Which I would hope that you had some coins saved, from that. Is that really the largest risk, right? Probably not, but it's still scary. It's still scary. It doesn't matter. It's still scary.
And people don't want to, I feel like they're held back because they're comfortable.
Yeah.
And, that's the worst thing. You know what? And I will say this, that when people get comfortable, I asked my dad, I'm like, well, if it wasn't so awful in communism, it was not as bad. It was socialist, but not he's like, I would have stayed. He's like, if it wasn't a 1 out of 10 or a 1.5 out of 10, right? Then he may have not risked life and death,
Right.
And it was dangerous, to leave. People was it was extremely dangerous, to take the risk. And I'll tell you a crazy secret that I didn't even know until recently of how my grandfather was a physician, and I asked, did he know anyone famous as you were leaving,
Oh, wow.
And did he know Albert Einstein or something, And
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah.
no. He's like, but he's like, your grandma was best friends with the secretary, and I forget the name. I wish this would be really great, but it's the most famous psychiatrist of all time.
Oh, wow.
And I forget.
Not Sigmund Freud. Not Freud. Not Sigmund Freud.
It could have been Freud. I can confirm which one it was. But the crazy part of the story was, there's all of these great works. And I didn't know about this till about a couple months ago. My dad told me. They burned it. They trashed it. Big why? They're like, if they catch it, we die. Right? So it's I'm like, oh, this would have been great for to advance society. And
of course.
The reality is that sometimes you just try to, how dangerous it is to leave.
Yeah. But that is really something special for every one of us to think about. Because to your point, number one, I have learned in my life that your comfort zone is actually more dangerous than taking a risk. Because when we stay in that comfort zone, there's so many great things that we might not be taking advantage of because we're in that comfort zone. So we have to kind of step outside of that at all times, right? Even this, right, Phil? I mentioned when we started this, you and I have not met before, right? We've been in the mortgage industry together, doing our thing, but I have always had this podcast. I've been doing a podcast since 2019. And I always do it because I want to meet new people. I want to hear your story. I want to know what's going on. And I challenge everyone that's listening to this today. That's part of our mission in life. If we can learn other people's, that story you shared about your father and what you learned about your grandma, we need to be sharing those kind of things. Like those are stories and unique experiences that need to be spread, right? We need to share those things. Those are good, good, wonderful things. And we also have to remember that our comfort zone is very limiting. It allows us to feel good because, yeah, it's protecting us from danger. But a lot of times the greatest things are just outside of that comfort zone. And I want to tie this back to your investors and your DSCR people because, listen, I know you do a lot of education and all of this about investment. Now, what I want to ask you, number one, is what have you seen over the last few years in terms of the growth of non-QM and DSCR and these investor products? And what do you see in the future? Like, I know some people are worried about fraud. Some people are concerned about reverse occupancy fraud and things like that. And I'd love to hear your opinion as an expert in this field. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I've heard that. What I would say is, these products give the little guy the opportunity to win. Is there fraud? Let me tell you, the best defense against fraud is the loan officer. The loan officer will know if it's reversed or not. I mean, it's nonsense. You have an idea. I've been doing it 27 years. Have I been fooled like once out of like $1 billion? Maybe once, right? But that was like, it took a lot to fool me, right? So I would say we just have to raise the standard of the loan officer. And you got to make the punishments more severe. And if I think that's how you do it, it's ultimately up to the loan officer to know. They're not going to get, especially most of this fraud, it's multi-step process.
It is. Right.
This is not like, one thing. This is like well-coordinated, thought out, meticulously planned, coordination of events.
Yeah, you're right.
This is not that. So what do I think? And by the way, obviously I live in Florida. There's way more fraud in Florida. People want to know, being from Boston, is there? 100%. Not even close. You say why? Because
why?
Transient. No one's really from Florida. The history in Boston, you're more likely to be from there. People know. I just think it's a culture thing. I think that's.
It is true. There's not a lot of native, right? It's a lot of people that have moved there from places.
The culture is more high speed, fast, take risks. I think it's a culture thing. And I think you see way more of it from, the customers and the loan officers, and ultimately what the banks even view. Like, look, if I'm an underwriter, I may view things differently. If it's a Boston app, then maybe a Florida app. They're way more on top of it. I had a loan that someone that church went from a 1099 to a W-2, and it's fine, but they were more suspicious of it.
Yeah.
Because it was Florida, right? This is just the reality, and they're not wrong. They're right. I would look closer in Florida than I would in Boston. Not to say that there isn't
of course.
Other states.
Yeah.
But I could also say, typically what you'd probably see is, it follows the loan officer. You'd probably see a loan officer that's traveled to many places, right? And you would see probably, I could only imagine, a loan officer that would give all their business to probably one investor because they know the systems, right?
Yeah.
They know who they're dealing with.
Yeah, they know how they're going to interpret it. They know what they're going to ask for. They know,
Bank robber movie on Netflix. What do? They scout. They know when the guards are.
Exactly. Yeah. They know exactly what's going to bypass and what isn't. Yeah.
The white collar robbery. They know all the players.
Yeah.
And there's usually someone on the inside that's helping, right? How would you fool all these systems? You just know the weak spots. But
Very good point.
Yeah, I focus on the good and clean business. The best thing I can tell someone is just say no. There's enough good business out there to just go get the good business.
I love it. And what do you know? We're going to wrap up right here, actually, with two things. One, of course, what's your outlook for non-QM, for DSCR? What is your prediction in terms of, do you see growth over the next, take us down to 2030, right? What do you see until until the change of the decade? What do you see?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It's all geolocation. This is where people make mistakes.
Okay.
If you ask me, what do I think New York City with Mondani is going to allow great investors? No, I'll be honest. Like, it's going to be complete failure, right? I mean, you want to see what socialism will do in New York City? I'm going to tell you. You can keep this as a record. It's going to be the greatest failure ever. Do I think Miami, South Florida, they're going to eliminate property taxes or reduce it? Do I think that's going to help? Sure, right? Tremendously. Florida is running 50% is now 50% or less of the budget of New York. We have more people. You're going to see a real growth from Florida and Texas.
Right.
I think Texas could be a home run. I think a lot of the South, you're like, well, where should I invest? Well, go look at the college football playoffs, right? SEC, Big Ten. You're going to have, more opportunity in a lot of different states that want growth, right? So it's not going to be equal.
Right.
It's a question, but it's not equal. I think a lot of states are going to suffer. And if you're in a state that's going to grow, there wasn't an accident that, in fact, this is why we have our website, Make Florida Your Home. And I'll tell you this, a lot of web traffic is down because they think of AI, but because we've invested in SEO and we actually really understand things, we're growing with leads. We have so many leads right now. We don't, we send it to our loan officers. I don't know if they call our leads. I hope they do. But we really want to grow. We're focused in on leads, right? That's a big thing about our Make Florida Your Home. We also make Texas your home, but these are the states we're focused in on. I obviously do a lot of Massachusetts business, but I'm not as optimistic about Boston as I am about Florida. I can be honest.
Right. No, I think that makes complete sense. Exactly how you're describing it. It's not going to be across the entire United States. You gotta know your market.
Rent control. Let me tell you, rent control, guys, is not good for DSCR loans.
Right.
I mean, this is
Makes
bad.
sense.
That means your debt service is going to go down and not up. That's bad.
Correct. Makes sense. Well, Phil, this has been extremely valuable. Thank you for sharing your tidbits, your wisdom. I love the story about our, the conversation about not life and death and making those decisions of risk. So, Phil, how can people learn more about you and connect with you and know more of what you are doing?
Well, you can call me. It's 617-529-9317. Always reach out. Or you can just add me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with all of us. And keep shining always.
Thank you.